The waiting area at Logan International Airport hummed with the restless energy of travelers on a chilly autumn morning. Rain streaked down the tall glass windows, blurring the view of the tarmac. Inside, the overhead announcements cut through the low murmur of conversation, reminding passengers to check their gates and belongings. Among the sea of people, Amelia Foster stood apart, her tailored navy blazer and matching pencil skirt emphasizing her polished, professional demeanor. She adjusted her silk scarf and tapped her designer heels against the floor, the faint sound betraying her mounting impatience. Amelia scrolled through emails on her phone, her sharp green eyes scanning the endless stream of urgent messages from colleagues. Today was crucial. She was flying to Dallas for a leadership summit, an opportunity to secure a position on the executive board of her company. Her presentation, meticulously prepared, was her ticket to impress the right people and solidify her reputation. The announcement of another delay grated on her nerves, but she refused to let it show beyond a tight clench of her jaw. Finally, the boarding announcement for first-class passengers crackled through the speakers. Amelia exhaled sharply, straightened her scarf, and strode toward the gate. Inside the plane, she settled into seat 1A, stowing her leather briefcase in the overhead compartment before sitting down with a sigh of relief. She pulled out her phone and began reviewing her presentation notes, eager to distract herself from the chaos of the airport. Her brief reprieve was interrupted when a tall man in his early 40s appeared in the aisle. He wore a navy camouflage uniform, his polished shoes and composed demeanor commanding attention. The name tag on his chest read E. Carter. He glanced at his ticket and then at the seat beside Amelia. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with a polite nod. "That's my seat." Amelia looked up, her smile thin and forced. She moved her belongings to make room but inwardly bristled. The man settled into seat 1B with practiced ease, his calm presence contrasting sharply with Amelia's simmering irritation. She glanced at him out of the corner of her eye, noting the small insignia on his sleeve that identified him as a lieutenant. Her thoughts churned. Why is he here? Did the airline upgrade him as a courtesy? First-class seats aren't cheap. This must be some military perk. Amelia turned back to her phone, her fingers scrolling furiously as she tried to suppress her annoyance. A flight attendant approached, offering pre-departure beverages. The man in uniform declined with a polite smile, but the attendant's tone shifted, warm and appreciative. "Thank you for your service, Lieutenant Carter. Please let me know if you need anything." Amelia's lips pressed into a thin line. She reached for her glass of sparkling water, her thoughts growing sharper. Of course, everyone bends over backward for soldiers. Meanwhile, the rest of us have to work for everything we get. As the plane began to taxi down the runway, Amelia caught sight of Carter pulling a photograph from his jacket pocket. It was a small, slightly worn picture of a young girl, her dark curls framing a bright, infectious smile. She held a soccer ball under one arm, her other hand waving enthusiastically at the camera. The sight stirred an unexpected pang of curiosity in Amelia. "Cute picture," she said coolly. "Your daughter?" Carter turned toward her, his expression softening as he nodded. "Yes, ma'am. That's my daughter, Lily." Amelia's tone remained distant. She must be proud of her dad in uniform. "Are you traveling home from deployment?" Carter's smile faded slightly, though his voice stayed calm. "No, ma'am. I'm heading to Dallas to see her." Amelia's curiosity sparked. "Must be nice to get the airline to upgrade you. First class is a step up from coach, isn't it?" Carter's jaw tightened, though his tone remained measured. "I paid for this seat myself. I'm not looking for any special treatment." Amelia's cheeks flushed faintly, though she masked it with a shrug. She inserted her earbuds and turned toward the window, signaling the end of the conversation. Yet her thoughts lingered, replaying the exchange. For the first time, a seed of doubt took root. Had she misjudged him? The flight attendants began serving drinks and meals once the plane reached cruising altitude. Amelia requested a glass of Chardonnay, letting the alcohol dull the sharp edges of her irritation. She glanced at Carter, who quietly declined the complimentary wine offered to him. When his meal was served, the flight attendant once again thanked him for his service. Amelia's frustration boiled over. "Don't you ever get tired of people fawning over you just because you wear a uniform?" she asked, her tone sharper than intended. Carter's brow furrowed slightly, but he responded with the same calm composure. "I appreciate the kindness, but I don't ask for special treatment." "Really?" Amelia countered, her voice tinged with sarcasm. "Because it seems like everyone goes out of their way to remind you how grateful they are. Meanwhile, the rest of us work just as hard and don't get freebies." Carter set down his fork, his voice quiet but firm. "If it bothers you that much, I'll pay for my meal. It's not a big deal." Amelia waved a hand dismissively. "It's not about the meal. It's about fairness." Silence stretched between them as Carter returned to his meal, his focus unwavering. Amelia turned back to her wine, her thoughts a storm of irritation and unease. She told herself she was justified, but the image of Lily's smiling face lingered in her mind, refusing to fade. Morning sunlight filtered through the windows of Amelia Foster's hotel room, casting a soft glow on the neatly arranged furniture. The buzzing of her phone woke her earlier than planned. She blinked against the brightness, reaching for it with a groggy hand. As her eyes adjusted, she glanced at the notification on the screen. It was from her news app, delivering the latest updates from around the city. Amelia swiped to open it, expecting routine headlines about the stock market or political developments. Instead, her gaze fell on a headline that made her heart skip a beat. "Army Lieutenant appeals for help for critically ill daughter." She froze, her breath caught as she stared at the accompanying photograph. A young girl lay in a hospital bed, her curly hair framing a pale face. She held a stuffed animal in one hand, her expression one of quiet bravery. Amelia recognized the girl immediately. It was the same child from the photograph Lieutenant Carter had shown her on the plane. Her pulse quickened as she tapped the article. The story detailed how Eric Carter, an Army lieutenant recently back from overseas deployment, was racing against time to save his daughter. Lily Carter, just 9 years old, was battling a severe congenital heart defect. The surgery she needed was groundbreaking but classified as experimental, leaving a significant portion of the cost uncovered by military insurance. The article mentioned that Eric had set up a fundraiser to bridge the financial gap. Amelia's fingers hovered over her screen as she read through the details. The goal was $150,000, but only a fraction of that had been raised. Messages of support filled the fundraiser page. Strangers had written heartfelt notes of encouragement, praising Eric's service and expressing hope for Lily's recovery. Amelia felt a pang of guilt as the memories of their tense interaction on the plane resurfaced. She had been quick to judge Eric, assuming the worst without knowing anything about him or his circumstances. Her dismissive comments now felt like sharp jabs in her chest. She had not just been rude, she had been unfair. She clicked on the donation link, her mind racing. The suggested amounts ranged from $20 to $500. Her eyes moved to the empty field labeled Other. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. After a moment of indecision, she typed in 10,000. Her breath hitched as she stared at the number. Was this too much? Would it seem insincere, like she was trying to buy forgiveness? Amelia bit her lip, conflicted. But as she scrolled back to the photo of Lily, pale and fragile in her hospital bed, she knew the answer. This was not about her guilt. It was about doing what was right. She pressed submit. The confirmation screen appeared, thanking her for her donation. Amelia sat back against the headboard, the weight of her actions settling over her. The guilt had not disappeared, but there was a small sense of relief, like the first step in atoning for her behavior had been taken. For the rest of the morning, Amelia tried to focus on her presentation. She rehearsed her key points, tweaked her slides, and reviewed her notes. But no matter how hard she tried, her thoughts kept drifting back to Eric and Lily. Questions churned in her mind. Was the fundraiser making enough progress? How was Lily doing? Was Eric coping with the pressure? By the time her conference session began, Amelia's usual confidence felt distant. She delivered her presentation flawlessly, earning polite applause and a few handshakes from impressed attendees. Yet the sense of accomplishment she usually reveled in felt hollow. As the day wound down, she found herself back in her hotel room, staring at her phone once again. Opening the fundraiser page, she noticed the total had inched slightly higher since her donation. Encouraging comments continued to pour in, some from people clearly inspired by Eric's story. Amelia scrolled down to see an update Eric had posted just hours earlier. It read, "Lily had a rough night, but she's fighting hard. Thank you to everyone who has supported us. Your kindness means the world." Amelia set her phone aside and leaned back in her chair, staring out the window at the city lights. A thought had begun to take shape in her mind, persistent and clear. She could not stop at a donation. There was more she could do, and for reasons she did not yet fully understand, she felt compelled to try. The morning air was crisp as Amelia Foster stepped out of her hotel, her mind clouded with thoughts she could no longer push aside. The streets of Dallas bustled with life, but Amelia felt strangely detached from it all. The fundraiser, the photograph of Lily Carter, and the updates from Eric had woven themselves into the fabric of her thoughts. She knew she couldn't move forward without taking a more deliberate step. Amelia's taxi pulled up in front of a modest hospital, its facade a blend of hope and urgency. Peachtree Children's Hospital wasn't flashy, but it radiated a sense of purpose. Taking a deep breath, Amelia stepped through the automatic doors, the sterile smell of disinfectant washing over her. She paused at the reception desk, her polished demeanor faltering. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I'm looking for Lily Carter. I read about her fundraiser and wanted to check in." The nurse behind the desk glanced up from her clipboard, her expression softening. "Are you family?" she asked. Amelia hesitated. "Not exactly. I met her father recently. I just wanted to see if there's anything I can do to help." The nurse studied her for a moment before nodding. "Room 312. She's in critical care. Her father should be with her now." Amelia thanked her and made her way down the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, and the beeping of monitors grew louder as she approached. When she reached the room, she hesitated at the door, her heart pounding. Through the glass, she could see Eric Carter seated beside a small hospital bed. His broad shoulders seemed weighed down by an invisible burden, his hand resting lightly on his daughter's. Amelia knocked softly and Eric's head snapped up. His eyes widened in surprise as he recognized her. "Miss Foster?" he asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and caution. "What are you doing here?" Amelia stepped inside, her palms damp with nervousness. I saw the article about Lily. I wanted to help." Her gaze shifted to the small girl lying in the bed, her frail frame surrounded by wires and monitors. Despite her condition, there was a peacefulness to her expression that tugged at Amelia's heart. Eric's eyes narrowed slightly as if trying to decipher her intentions. "Help how?" "I donated to the fundraiser," Amelia said quickly. "But I realized that money isn't enough. If there's anything else you need, connections, logistics, anything, I want to do more." Eric's posture softened, though a hint of skepticism lingered. "That's generous of you, but why? You barely know us." Amelia swallowed hard. "Because I was wrong," she admitted. "When we met on the plane, I made assumptions about you. I said things I'm not proud of. When I saw that article, it made me realize how unfair I was. I can't take back what I said, but I can try to make it right." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Eric nodded slowly. "Lily needs all the help she can get," he said. "If you're serious about this, we'll take whatever support you're willing to offer." Amelia exhaled, a sense of relief washing over her. She glanced back at Lily, her small hand clutching a stuffed bear. "How is she doing?" Eric's face clouded with worry. She's stable for now, but the surgery is critical. The specialists say it's her best chance, but there are still so many hurdles to clear. Then let's clear them, Amelia said firmly. I have resources, connections. Let me help navigate the process. Eric studied her, his expression softening further. All right, he said. But just know that this isn't about fixing something quickly. This is my daughter's life. I understand, Amelia replied. And I'm here for the long haul. Over the next few hours, Amelia dove into action. She made calls to specialists, reviewed insurance policies, and reached out to contacts who could help expedite the process. Each step felt like a small victory, a tangible way to channel her guilt into something meaningful. As she worked, she caught glimpses of Eric sitting quietly by Lily's side, his steady presence a testament to his love for his daughter. By the time Amelia left the hospital that evening, she felt a mix of exhaustion and purpose. The road ahead was daunting, but for the first time she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. As she stepped into the cool night air, she looked back at the hospital, its windows glowing softly in the darkness. A spark of hope ignited within her. This was only the beginning. Amelia Foster walked into the hospital lobby early the next morning, carrying a bag of coffee and pastries she had picked up on the way. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the antiseptic scent of the hospital. She paused for a moment, glancing around the bustling lobby before heading toward the elevators. When she arrived at Lily Carter's room, she found Eric seated by his daughter's bed, his posture both protective and weary. He was flipping through a small book, his voice low as he read aloud to Lily. The little girl's pale face lit up when Amelia entered, and Eric looked up with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Morning," Amelia said softly, holding up the bag. "Thought you might need a little pick-me-up?" Eric stood, accepting the coffee with a nod. "Thanks. You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Amelia replied, setting the pastries on the small table by the window. She turned to Lily and offered her a warm smile. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" Lily's voice was faint but cheerful. "Tired, but Daddy says I'm being really brave." "He's absolutely right," Amelia said, pulling up a chair beside the bed. "You're one of the bravest kids I've ever met." Eric watched the exchange quietly, his expression thoughtful. Over the past day, Amelia's presence had gone from unexpected to oddly comforting. She had thrown herself into helping them, making calls, coordinating with specialists, and even rallying some of her business contacts to contribute to the fundraiser. He couldn't help but admire her determination, even if he still struggled to understand what had driven her to get involved so deeply. "I made some progress last night," Amelia said, pulling out a tablet and opening a file. "I spoke to Dr. Ramos's office. He's one of the leading pediatric cardiac surgeons in the country, and he specializes in cases like Lily's. His schedule is tight, but I managed to get Lily's case bumped up for review." Eric's brows lifted. "You did all that overnight?" Amelia shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'm used to working under pressure. And I'm pretty good at convincing people to prioritize what matters." Eric exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "That's incredible. Thank you." "It's the least I can do," Amelia said, her tone softening. She hesitated, glancing at Lily before continuing. "I know I came into this late, but I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere until we get Lily what she needs." The sincerity in her voice silenced any lingering doubts Eric might have had. He nodded, his expression one of quiet gratitude. "We're lucky to have you on our side." For the next few hours, Amelia worked alongside Eric, sifting through insurance documents and medical records. They made calls, followed up with specialists, and strategized how to navigate the bureaucratic hurdles that stood between Lily and her surgery. Through it all, Amelia's focus never wavered. Her corporate experience, once honed for profit margins and quarterly reports, was now fully directed at saving a little girl's life. As the day wore on, Lily drifted in and out of sleep, her small frame curled under a pastel blanket. At one point, Amelia stepped out to take a call, pacing the hallway as she spoke with a contact at a philanthropic foundation she had reached out to the night before. By the time she returned to the room, her face was lit with cautious optimism. "Good news," she said, her voice brightening the somber atmosphere. "The foundation I spoke with is interested in covering part of the surgical costs. They'll need some additional paperwork, but it's a big step forward." Eric stood and clasped her shoulder briefly, his gratitude evident in his tired eyes. "You're a miracle worker, Amelia?" "Hardly," she replied, a faint blush creeping into her cheeks. "But I'll take the compliment if it means we're making progress." As evening fell, Amelia prepared to leave for the day. She paused at the doorway, turning back to look at Eric and Lily. Eric was settling into the chair beside the bed, his hand resting protectively on Lily's. The sight stirred something deep within Amelia, a mixture of determination and hope. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said. "And I'll keep pushing until we get Lily everything she needs." Eric nodded, his voice steady. "Thank you, Amelia. For everything." As she stepped out into the cool night air, Amelia felt an unfamiliar but welcome sense of purpose. This wasn't about making up for past mistakes anymore. It was about doing something that truly mattered. And for the first time in years, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The morning of Lily Carter's surgery dawned gray and overcast. Amelia Foster arrived at the hospital just after sunrise, her heart pounding as she stepped out of the cab. The cold air stung her cheeks, but she barely noticed as she hurried inside. The weight of the day ahead pressed heavily on her chest, a mixture of hope and anxiety swirling in her mind. Inside the pediatric surgical wing, the atmosphere was tense but quiet. Families whispered to each other, their words filled with prayers and nervous reassurances. Amelia made her way to the waiting area outside the operating room, where Eric Carter sat slouched in a chair. He looked up as she approached, his face pale and drawn with exhaustion. "Morning," Amelia said softly, setting a cup of coffee down beside him. "I thought you might need this." Eric straightened slightly, managing a faint smile. "Thanks. I don't think I've slept more than an hour all night." Amelia sat down beside him, her own nerves showing in the way she fidgeted with her scarf. "How is Lily holding up?" she asked. "She's scared, but she's trying to be brave," Eric said, his voice thick with emotion. "I told her it's okay to be scared. She's so strong for her age, but it's a lot for anyone to handle." The conversation fell silent for a moment, the only sounds the distant beeping of monitors and the occasional murmur of hospital staff. Amelia glanced toward the double doors leading to the operating room, imagining the sterile high-stakes environment on the other side. "She has the best team working on her," Amelia said, her tone firm. "Dr. Ramos is one of the best in the country. If anyone can help Lily, it's him." Eric nodded, gripping the coffee cup in his hands. "I know. I just wish I could be in there with her. She's been through so much already. I hate that she has to go through this too." Amelia reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "She knows you're here. That's what matters. And we're both going to be here when she comes out, ready to help her through whatever comes next." The minutes stretched into hours as they waited. Amelia alternated between pacing the room and sitting beside Eric, the tension mounting with each passing moment. Occasionally, a nurse would appear to provide updates, their words calm and professional but never quite enough to dispel the anxiety that lingered. Amelia found herself staring at the clock on the wall, willing the hands to move faster. Her thoughts drifted to the past few weeks, the whirlwind of activity that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the day she met Eric on the plane, her judgmental remarks, and the guilt that had driven her to take action. Now, sitting beside him, she felt a deep sense of purpose that transcended her initial motivations. At one point, Eric's phone buzzed with a call. He stepped away to take it, leaving Amelia alone in the waiting area. She folded her hands in her lap, her eyes fixed on the floor as she whispered a silent prayer. She wasn't particularly religious, but in that moment she found herself reaching for something, anything, to hold on to. When Eric returned, his expression was a mix of gratitude and weariness. "That was my sister," he said. "She's driving up today to see Lily. She's been a big help keeping the rest of the family updated." Amelia nodded. "That's good. It'll be nice to have more support here." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doors to the operating room opened. Dr. Ramos emerged, his scrubs slightly rumpled but his expression calm. Both Amelia and Eric stood immediately, their eyes locked on the surgeon. "The procedure went well," Dr. Ramos said, his voice steady. "We were able to repair the defect, and Lily responded as expected. She'll need close monitoring in the ICU for the next few days, but I'm cautiously optimistic about her recovery." Eric's shoulders sagged with relief, tears streaming down his face as he muttered a heartfelt thank you. Amelia felt her own eyes fill with tears, the weight of the past hours finally lifting. Dr. Ramos continued, "You can see her once she's settled in the ICU. She'll be groggy for a while, but it's important for her to hear familiar voices when she wakes up." Eric nodded, his voice shaking. "We'll be there." As the doctor walked away, Amelia turned to Eric. "She made it through," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's going to be okay." Eric pulled her into a hug, his gratitude overwhelming. "Thank you, Amelia. For everything. I couldn't have done this alone." Amelia hugged him back, her own emotions threatening to spill over. "You're not alone, Eric. We're in this together." As they waited to see Lily, Amelia felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in years. The journey was far from over, but for the first time she believed they had a real chance to move forward, together. The sun dipped low on the horizon as Amelia Foster pushed open the door to Lily Carter's hospital room. The soft golden light filtered through the blinds, casting a warm glow on the small, sterile space. Inside, Lily was propped up in bed, her cheeks flushed with a faint hint of color that hadn't been there in weeks. A children's book lay open in her lap, and her eyes sparkled as she looked up to see Amelia. "Hi, Miss Amelia," Lily said, her voice still faint but laced with excitement. "Daddy said you were coming today." Amelia smiled, setting a paper bag on the table beside the bed. "Of course I am. And I brought you a little surprise. Want to see?" Lily nodded eagerly. Amelia reached into the bag and pulled out a small stuffed unicorn, its mane a swirl of pastel colors. Lily's face lit up as she clutched the toy to her chest, her joy radiating through the room. "It's perfect," Lily whispered, running her fingers over the soft fabric. "Thank you." Eric Carter, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood and approached Amelia. He gave her a tired but grateful smile. "You've been spoiling her," he said, though there was no reprimand in his tone. "She's going to expect something every time you come now." "That's the plan," Amelia replied with a chuckle. "And she deserves it." Eric's expression softened as he looked at Lily, who was now absorbed in an animated conversation with her new toy. For a moment, the room was filled with a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. "How are you holding up?" Amelia asked quietly, turning to Eric. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Better now that she's out of the woods. But it's still hard. There's a long road ahead and some days it feels like it never ends." "You're doing an incredible job," Amelia said, her tone earnest. "And you're not alone in this. We're all here to help." Eric nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You've done so much for us already. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Amelia replied. "Lily's smile is all the thanks I need." They both turned their attention back to Lily, who was now attempting to read aloud from her book, pausing every so often to make her unicorn talk. The sound of her laughter filled the room, a stark contrast to the somber quiet that had once dominated the space. Over the next week, Amelia became a regular presence at the hospital. She helped Eric coordinate follow-up appointments, arrange for physical therapy sessions, and even began reaching out to local organizations that could provide additional support for military families. Her corporate connections, once used to broker deals and land promotions, now served a different purpose. She used her influence to rally resources and attention for causes that mattered. One afternoon, as Amelia reviewed a stack of medical documents with Eric in the hospital cafeteria, he set his pen down and looked at her intently. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked. "You've already gone above and beyond. Most people would have moved on by now." Amelia paused, considering her response. "Because it feels right," she said finally. "I spent so much of my life chasing things that didn't really matter. Success, recognition, money. But helping you and Lily has shown me something I'd been missing. This feels real." Eric nodded slowly, his gaze thoughtful. "It is real," he said. "And it makes a difference." As Lily continued to recover, Amelia's bond with the Carters deepened. She became a fixture in their lives, not just as a supporter but as a friend. When Lily was finally discharged from the hospital, it was Amelia who pushed the wheelchair through the lobby, a proud smile on her face as they stepped out into the fresh air. That evening, the Carters invited Amelia to join them for a small celebration at their home. It was a modest gathering, just a few close friends and family members, but the atmosphere was warm and full of love. Lily, wearing her favorite pink dress, insisted on showing Amelia every drawing she had made during her hospital stay. As the night wore on, Amelia found herself sitting on the porch with Eric, the quiet hum of conversation and laughter drifting through the open windows. The stars above seemed brighter than usual, their light casting a soft glow over the yard. "You've changed our lives, Amelia," Eric said, his voice steady. "And not just with the fundraiser or the hospital connections. You've given us hope. That means more than anything else." Amelia looked out at the yard, where Lily was chasing fireflies with her cousins, her laughter echoing through the night. "You've changed mine too," she said quietly. "I've learned more about what matters in these past few weeks than I did in years of working my way up the corporate ladder." Eric nodded, a small smile on his face. "Sometimes, it takes going through the hard stuff to see what's really important." As Amelia watched Lily catch a firefly and hold it gently in her hands, she felt a deep sense of peace. This journey, though unexpected and challenging, had led her to something far greater than she had ever anticipated. And for the first time in a long while, she felt truly at home. The months that followed Lily Carter's discharge from the hospital were filled with milestones. Slowly but surely she regained her strength. Her once frail body grew stronger with every passing day, and her laughter, once a rare and fleeting sound, became a constant presence in the Carter home. Eric Carter watched his daughter blossom with a mixture of gratitude and relief, knowing how close they had come to losing her. Amelia Foster remained a vital part of their lives. Her visits were no longer centered on medical logistics or pressing concerns. Instead, they were about spending time together, sharing meals and building memories. On sunny afternoons, she often joined Lily and Eric at the park, where Lily's newfound energy seemed boundless. They would race through the grass, laughter echoing in the air as Lily's sneakers lit up with every step. One crisp autumn evening, Amelia arrived at the Carter home carrying a neatly wrapped gift. Lily greeted her at the door, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "What is it?" Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. "Open it and find out," Amelia said with a smile, handing over the box. Lily tore into the wrapping paper, revealing a scrapbook filled with photos and mementos from her hospital stay and the journey that followed. Each page was carefully crafted, capturing moments of hope, resilience, and love. There were pictures of Lily with her doctors, snapshots of the fundraiser events, and candid photos of their time together as a makeshift family. "It's beautiful," Lily whispered, running her fingers over the pages. "Thank you, Miss Amelia." Eric, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway, approached with a warm smile. "You've outdone yourself," he said. "This means a lot to her. To both of us." Amelia waved him off playfully. "It was the least I could do." Lily deserves to have something to remind her of how strong she is. Later that evening, as Lily played with her cousins in the backyard, Amelia and Eric sat on the porch, sipping tea and enjoying the cool breeze. The faint sound of crickets filled the air, blending with the distant hum of laughter and chatter. "You've changed everything for us," Eric said after a moment of silence. "I don't think I can ever fully express how much you mean to our family." Amelia shook her head, her gaze fixed on the stars above. "You've given me more than I could ever give you. You showed me what really matters in life. For so long I thought success was about climbing the corporate ladder, earning accolades and building wealth. But this is what matters." Eric's voice was steady. "Sometimes it takes going through something hard to realize what's important. But the way you stepped in, the way you cared for us, that's rare. You've become family, Amelia." She turned to him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "Family?" she repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." As the weeks turned into months, their bond only grew stronger. Amelia began to split her time between her corporate responsibilities and volunteering for organizations that supported military families and children with critical health needs. Her company, inspired by her passion, launched a new initiative to fund specialized medical care for underserved communities. Amelia led the program, pouring her heart into every project. Meanwhile, Lily thrived. She returned to school, where she quickly became a favorite among her classmates. Her story, shared in local news and through the fundraiser, inspired many in the community to come together and support others in need. Eric continued his service, balancing his duties with his role as a devoted father, always making time for Lily's milestones and achievements. One evening, about a year after Lily's surgery, Amelia stood in the Carters' living room, watching as Lily performed a short play she had written herself. The little girl's voice was full of confidence, her movements animated as she brought her characters to life. When the performance ended, Amelia and Eric clapped enthusiastically, their pride evident. "That was amazing, Lily," Amelia said, kneeling to hug her. "You're a natural." Lily beamed, her arms wrapped tightly around Amelia. "It's because of you, Miss Amelia. You helped me believe I could do anything." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes as she held the little girl close. "No, sweetheart. That strength was always inside you. You just needed a little help to see it." As the night wound down, Amelia stood on the porch once more, gazing out at the quiet street. Eric joined her, leaning against the railing as he followed her gaze. "What's next for you?" he asked. Amelia smiled faintly. "I'm not sure. But whatever it is, I know I want to keep making a difference. You and Lily taught me that." Eric nodded, a soft smile on his face. "You've already made more of a difference than you realize. And no matter where life takes you, you'll always have a place here." As Amelia left that night, the crisp autumn air filled her lungs, and she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had found a purpose beyond herself, a family she never expected, and a new path forward. For the first time in years, she felt complete. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to support more powerful storytelling like this. And don't stop there. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next video. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below to let us know how this story impacted you or what you'd like to see next. Your feedback helps us create meaningful content that connects with you. Thank you for being a part of our community. Your voice matters.